Lost Judgment, developed by RGG Studios, published by Sega, is coming out September 24th. A third-person action, small part of the town simulator. We join private detective Takayuki in a criminal case that'll test his resolve, his battle skills, and most likely the firmness number of his hair products. But hold up, let's think about this for a second. Judgment, which is itself a spin-off of Yakuza, which cribbed so hard from Shenmue 1 and 2 plagiarism, bots would probably report it to IGN. And certainly those games took a bit from, of course, the first third-person action titles back in the old days, as well as bigger blockbusters like Metal Gear and Virtua Fighter, which is how Shenmue actually became a thing. Does it pay off? Well, we're going to check that out right now. Let's talk about graphics. If you like the video, subscribe. It would absolutely help. Give it a thumbs up. And the Dragon Engine, like that, is always going to get a thumbs up from me. It continues to just deliver these lived-in, breathing, architecturally complex locations in great fashion and in great number. The highlight has to be the fighting and lighting, which consistently aims to offer a much more realistic and less over-the-top cartoony effect than we see in other open-world location games, but also offers reflections, light rays, cinematic blurs, and movie-like elements that are then integrated directly into the flashier antics of battle, as well as those incredible animations. Sometimes you see other games like this, and while their scale may be different, it's hard not to look at those and think, man, I sort of wish they would do this or that, like the Yakuza series and Judgment is doing now. From spot-on advertisements and cornerstone delis selling balls of nothing but carbs and protein, to underground vendors with questionable brew stews that you can sample. Seriously, I have to stop for a second and say, look at that. That dude didn't even take the crackers out of the box. What kind of fucking lunatic doesn't take the crackers out of the box and throws them in there with a whole fish? I dare you to drink that. Working with the best of the best as well. For example, the detective character. He looks like he rolled out of bed into a pile of HGH syringes and then tried to use a fucking grade school kid's tie and figured, you know what, screw it, and went to work anyway. Judgment and most games on the Dragon Engine do show an ambition to amplify that micro complexity of those locations versus the Big Bang locations and huge sprawling spots we see in other open world games. Yes, you can leap in cars in other games and tear ass through someone's brand new middle class 40, smashing their yard gnomes, but here, you walk down this overly complex location of Little China and it reveals out in the color work, the crowds, the architecture, and how everything folds in on itself, and you can see the different levels of detail as you move. The game's strength here lies in the confidence it has when displaying what it wants on the screen, from well-fleshed out crowds, the suburban cooks selling questionable broth, to fights in schoolrooms, packed with chairs that you can interact with. It rarely ever falters, but we're going to talk about that part in a second. Performance versus graphics. We should all be accustomed to these in the console settings now. You have your basic 60 versus 30 FPS, with your 30 FPS usually resulting in a higher resolution and more effects, and that's certainly what we see here, focusing on higher effects like lighting and various different reflections, but none of them have ray tracing. Be aware of that. Now, after playing for hours and hours, I can honestly say that either setting's probably going to be fine. It may have something to do with the way the game handles its motion blur, perhaps how it applies its effects. But the Xbox X in particular looks insanely good regardless of what setting you do. So I think a lot of people may end up just playing this on the higher graphical setting, but that of course will be up to you. There are some things that are noticeable in Lost Judgment right from the start, like the barren as hell interior of the schools. It makes it look like a location that's sort of a drag, and to be brutally honest, especially at the starting, it is. Also, lip syncing is not even close, and we knew that. The devs had already informed us that this game was completed very close to the launch compared to the other prior titles, and if you play in English, expect a fucking lot of mumble face. Within the genre, though, of open world games, there are many entries, from over-the-top entries like GTA all the way down to Sleeping Dogs, and of course even lower to the Yakuza, and now here with the Judgment series. They offer their own take, and I think the small block simulator versus the city simulator, with locations meted out in amazing detail, excellent looking outdoor spots, and phenomenal animations, lodges the Judgment games into a place all their own. And another place where all these games get compared is their audio, and Judgment continues in the same freeform but sort of lockstep of musical deliveries as the previous game. It's got softer, smoother jazz beats, odd celebration jingles when you finish a battle or complete a quest or have a moment with another person in the world as you guys get ready to hug but never actually do. Judgment's delivery of street-side hush and people chatting, dishes clattering, or various other sundries means that it works when a lot of other games wouldn't, when there isn't actually music playing. Easily the best parts here are when sinister forces come together to threaten an allegiance you've just begun, and you have this awesome, simple, threatening, consistent beat that translates directly from that cutscene into battle. And now that beat is the track's main line is awesome. My major complaint would be that there are times where the acting is left to its own without any real score. That has a tendency to go long beats without anything actually going on emotionally. Now, it's not only emotionally in the acting as they're discussing things, but also in that score. In a movie, I think that works a little bit better, and those scenes, because you're not interacting with them, are something you're more drawn to. Here, especially with how many there are, it can feel a little bit like it's missing something sometimes. Luckily, the voice work proves that they're not missing in that point. Some side characters in the dubbing have been changed. That works very well. I didn't really miss them. The lip syncing, as I said, isn't great. But man, for a game with a alien big bad guy or something not popping up every 2 seconds, nothing really crazy like the Yakuza series, everyone just sort of fits into their space emotionally with their acting. There's one character who, for the first half of the game, you're seriously wondering how is it possible for someone like that to be that much of a dick and get through life? But the writing actually steps in and it takes care of that. It ebbs them slowly into that gray line of friend or foe that's natural as hell, and something that, for example, we didn't see with Tales of Arise with that character there. There's been a couple switches, as I said, to the voice actors. Overall, they're sort of gone from excellent to excellent, though I would say that some of the characters in the school aren't the best. I think that's a weakness in a lot of games. The kids in the school, the way they talk. It's notoriously difficult to write the IQ neutered 2-word lingo that a lot of kids in school will have. And of course, we all sounded like that to our parents. Back and forth isn't necessarily very natural, especially for the way a lot of these kids are reacting, and in particular, what they're reacting to. The sound is excellent here. I talked about that a little bit when I was talking about the music, but I think emotionally, environmentally, those all come together perfectly. There are moments of silence when you're moving through the darker parts of the city, as well as that sort of white noise hymn, that blanket of audio that you get in the busier sections with the cars passing by, or various different restaurants opening and closing around you. And when you do decide to fight somebody, those sounds are definitely more along the lines of, let's say, a fighting game, but those work as well. I think they're awesome. Their impact sounds work great. And I think that, plus the excellent vocals and the unique use of music, though at times a little bit lame, still ends up coming together, and there's sort of a class that you can feel from this game, especially with those excellent vocals for the main characters. And speaking of story and characters, Lost Judgment continues the story of Takayuki as he runs his small private detective agency and tries to keep afloat and out of trouble. He's called in to help 2 other cases that sort of quickly begin to show signs of being connected in some way, as well as other events in the city. He's joined by a growing cast of always theirs and sometimes shower-uppers as he investigates a case of a suicide, sexual assault, and possible murder that combine. And just like Judgment, Lost Judgment, organically, is a very serious game. Alright, for the most part it's serious. You explore the locations, those are attached to the cases themselves as well as the night and day life of the city, and you begin to collect side missions. You also collect bulletin board missions, side activities like video games you can play, dating, you can join clubs that are attached to the local school as well as a teacher mentor if you get far enough in the quests there. Now, attaching a good deal of the events and mini quests to the school, I can tell you right now, at least for the first half of the game, is both an excellent idea and a bit of a miss. The biggest issue being that the game starting is slow. That feeling of moving around, of creeping up and down the various different hallways of this school, and the hilarity of you having your first mission is basically to put a bunch of secret cameras in a school, not the locker room, by the way, doesn't really get off its feet as soon as I believe it absolutely should. And as the story is moving on there, it's building up allegiances, story moments, and characterizations of the main characters, and they're building there as well, and I really think the game could have made that location a bit more interesting, especially when gamers who come in and they're accustomed to, let's say, the Yakuza series, and even the Last Judgment game, will probably expect something along the lines of their favorite nighttime haunts. Those are there, but you, strangely enough, sort of have to seek them out in a different way. This means you don't actually fight much at all unless you really go out and try to find it. This is a bit of a downer, as fighting in Judgment is that age-old Yakuza staple of in-your-face, real-time, crazy-ass, dirty, clumsy combat that I think we all know and love, flowing between one of 3 different martial arts styles. That's Crane and Snake and Tiger. Each offers their own bonuses and can be augmented by items that you buy from stores for power-ups. Each style also helps in specific events, whether it be boss battles one-on-one with a very difficult enemy, or group fights with a ton of enemies and you need some space, or a mix of them. There's really nothing like seeing Takayuki break out into a dubstep moment, spinning a 360 from the ground, helicopter kicking someone into a pillar. He's like that best friend who's quiet, but then when they're not, they're a buzzsaw made of Jedi particles and Street Fighter II moves that were banned for being too ruthless. I love him. One of the basic moves, the first moves, is to run and then slide on the ground like Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future playing the guitar and slam your knee into somebody's face. It's that brutal, comical combat that keeps Judgment really going. Depending on the difficulty, you will also need to watch your items, food you've bought, and your power-ups very closely during those battles. And it also just really feels good. Blocking is done fairly well, as is dodging, and if you buy the right skills for combat arts are plenty. There's some adding combos, other adding extra meters to combos, others adding moves to the combos or adding status effects to other attacks. Skills can also be bought that augment the bonus that you get from food, and these help you investigate more easily, and they feed into the side event stories, which I really like. Activities that you get and are still here from the other games. One second you're chasing down recipe items for chemical-laced power-ups, the next you're tracking down a UFO, then you're fighting different characters, then you're dancing to help your students learn the idiosyncrasies of J-pop, and then you're diving into the main story. And while the main story and the basic gameplay loop do feel the same, there are some adjustments here that are good. Stealth is a bit quicker, and tracking people seems to occur more smoothly, if not just tracked more quickly to a person when following them. It helps those kind of activities pop in and out, and it also means that there's more interaction for you to actually go in and engage in those because they feel a bit less cumbersome. Also, the PI team has its own AI system. Now, this thing tracks messages and tweets by location to indicate when trouble spots might show up. And you can track the various things people are saying, and it is just awesome. Now, we've seen this in other games. We've seen it in things like Spider-Man, but here in Judgment, you may walk past a group and they'll be talking about a subject, and then that subject fits into the filter of the search that you're doing with your AI and what's being posted and where they are on the map. Then you can travel there. This adds this really cool layer of organic exploration to everything in the game, where map markers are not just arrows, but they're actually someone sitting somewhere tweeting about ghosts next to a high school at night, and you can remember that. It is a very cool small moment of mixing the fiction into the gameplay. Man, that works really well. And it needs to, because Lost Judgment hits a couple problems. The first is, like plastic surgery freezes somebody's face into what some overpaid jackass considers beauty, there are moments here where Lost Judgment gets petrifyingly close to stalling out. There are times when it pushes you through points so quickly that making one step forward in a case moves a good deal of the story forward, and you're sort of hesitant to explore side moments, especially in the first, let's say, 8 hours of the game. It's best to force yourself to explore and go out into the city, because a good deal of this is not actually happening in those main points that you might have expected. Takayuki is friggin' awesome. Subdued martyrdom, justice, J-pop avant-garde dresser. He takes law into the street with skin-tight jeans, a leather jacket, and hair so teased it probably has its own weekly therapy. The thing is he is immensely likable, not just because he's a joker or a tough man or over the top like a lot of the Yakuza heroes, which is also fine. It's that he lends this subtle human condition to the game, helping out a kid who's bullied. He seems like that guy who may have been a little bit bullied when he was younger, and he just comes off incredibly real, while he is consistently questioning himself if things are right or wrong. He finds someone who does something wrong, and there's always this inner voice meeting someone halfway if he can, saying, yeah, man, you know, I get how you got here, but we're all adults, so that's life. And then he kicks them in the nuts 11 times and throws a chair at their face. But you still understood why he got there. But the question will be, do all these things come together? Is it as fun as Judgment, or is it fun in and of itself even? And yeah, it's very fun to play. It does feel a little bit more like it's made for bingefulness, like a TV show, than maybe the movie that Judgment was. It's more subdued in the offerings. It is more realistic in its desire to show growth in the characters, I would say, for sure. And it's got the mini games and the exploration and fighting, all of which are improved. You just have to actually go and try to sort of get to them, especially at the starting, because where the location of a lot of the starting events are is a little bit more out of the way than I think we really expect sucked in a game like this, and it causes a little bit of a tiny disconnect between what you're experiencing and what you can experience. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system. This is well worth getting. It is a different style game. It is a slower burn than the original. Be absolutely prepared. Once you jump in, though, you still have the same combat. You still have places to explore. You have different foods to get, a dog companion, an absolute plethora of power-ups, so many different things that you can do in these games. I like that they all offer a subtle difference. It's a little bit like the various different Star Wars movies offer something different. The first one, second one, and third one of any of the trilogies, other than the last ones where they all three sucked. Speaking of sucking, regardless of how your week was, I hope it doesn't suck. I hope you have an awesome one. I hope you're enjoying this week. I hope you're getting some gaming in. If you want to get some awesome discussion in, Friday, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We always do the live podcast here. We're going to be talking about games, talking about them weird-ass Deathloop reviews. We're going to be talking about all of the different stuff that has occurred this week, including delays. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike it, give it a thumbs down. Check out the Patreon. The Patreon actually helps. In fact, regardless, check out the Patreon. It is awesome for you guys to join. We've had a number of people jumping in. We have a cool discussion group there. I would love to see you. But if you can't, regardless, peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.